Hello and happy Friday. I am really excited about the demo today. If you've been following along with my AI sabbatical, you may have noticed that I'm about 2 months into this process. And the things I've been building and demoing each week, they've been quick and rapid prototypes, these lightweight demos. It's really been fun to explore new concepts quickly and learn new things and apply it and build with what I've been learning every week. But I wanted to shift gears this week, and I wanted to see if I could put together everything I've learned over the past few months and build a production grade system, a full end-to-end solution. I wanted to see if I could go from idea and concept through the stages of market research, product strategy, product vision, a comprehensive marketing plan, a brand, a logo, brand guidelines, all the way through to building and testing a solution using AI. And I was really blown away by just how fast this process could move. For me, it was less than 5 days from concept to something that's now production grade and actually ready to launch into production next week. The idea here is what I'm calling Growth Copilot. And it's an idea that came about because of multiple conversations I've had over the past few months with small business owners and independent workers. When they learned about what I've been doing with my sabbatical, several people reached out to say, hey, I have a small business. I really need help with my marketing. I believe that AI could be helpful. I don't know where to start. And I'm also really busy and I don't have a lot of time. And so I started thinking about a solution that would be helpful for these types of folks. They could leverage AI to help them create a marketing strategy, a marketing plan for each week, help them draft content and then refine that content and then publish, and then even engage with community on topics that are relevant for their business. And the idea here isn't just fully automating and creating more AI slop, but it's using AI assistance very thoughtfully to make sure that the content that is drafted and recommended is relevant for that brand, for their customers, that can be shaped and refined by the individual owner, and it can scale up and down based on how much time they have available that week to focus on marketing. And so I'm going to break today's demo into two parts. The first part is going to be all about the process. How did this go from the idea, the concept, to the full production ready solution? What were those steps? How did AI help at every step of the way? One of the things that you're going to notice as I go through this is that there's a lot of work that's being done that would have previously been done by specialized roles. You're going to see the work of a strategist, a product marketer, a creative designer, a user experience expert, a product manager, a front-end engineer, a back-end engineer, a data engineer. And one of the things that we're starting to see with AI is that the traditional roles are all starting to blur together. If you're a fan of Lenny's podcast, as I am, you may have seen the interview he did with Dylan Field this week. Dylan is the founder and CEO of Figma, and Dylan talked about this exact same topic. In fact, Dylan said something to the effect of, we are all product builders now. The roles are blurring, and this is going to be the new reality for a lot of people working in tech. So that'll be the first part of this demo. The second part of the demo is going to be getting into the technology side of things, getting into the AI, talking about how I used OpenAI's AgentKit to coordinate multiple agents, how I used different types of LLMs for different specialized tasks, how I used retrieval augmented generation to make sure that the LLMs have the right context around things like the small business brand, identity, website, multiple documents that can be added in terms of brand guidelines, ideal customer profile, things that will help the output be so much better and more specific and tailored to that business. So that's what I'm going to share in the demo. And then before I wrap up, just one note. Those of you who've been following closely, you may have noticed that last week there was no demo. And the reason for that is that I'd gotten several days into what I was prototyping when Claude Code accidentally deleted most of my repo. Over 90% of the code completely gone. And when I checked, I realized I hadn't backed up and checked out my code to GitHub in several days. I lost everything. It was super frustrating. It was also deeply embarrassing because as young engineers, we are taught the fundamentals of you always back up your code, you always check in your code early and often, you treat your code as a really valuable resource. And so I should have known better. And I sat with that frustration, I sat with that embarrassment for a while. And then I realized that I had really committed in this process of building and learning in public to sharing everything. And that means the wins and the losses, the successes, the failures, the lessons learned. I really didn't want to share this embarrassing update with all of you. But I decided that's the right thing to do. That's what I committed to do. And the interesting thing is that as soon as I decided to do that, and as soon as I shared that update, I instantly felt better. I felt connected to a wider community, and the response I got was fantastic. So much support, so many people saying, that really stinks. Several people saying, thank you for sharing that update because it was a really good reminder for all of us building with AI. And so my energy, my enthusiasm shifted 180 degrees. And I came into this week really fired up to go from not just a demo to a full production ready system, rebuild what I had lost. I had all the same ideas and concepts that were still intact, and I could move really fast through rebuilding and building something that was even bigger and grander than what I had attempted to do last week. So thank you for following along. I hope you find this demo interesting and valuable, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. All right, let's jump into the demo. This is Growth Copilot, and I'll give you a quick tour of what I built, how this works. This is the main screen that you come to. Like I mentioned earlier, this is all about helping small businesses grow in a smarter way with a little help from AI. You can see this has got a little interactive section to focus on what is the primary goal that you have when you come to Growth Copilot. It's talking a little bit about how this works, everything you need to grow. It's giving you basically the whole overview of the system. I've got things in here like an about section. This is a little bit of the story behind Growth Copilot and the company name Owl and Olive. The owl is signifying wisdom here, so strategic insight, pattern recognition, some clarity. The olive signifying warmth, so authenticity and human connection. This was really intentional. This is something where OpenAI was really helpful in helping me think through the name and the logo and the brand guidelines and all that good stuff. I'll talk a little bit later about how that came to life. We have a section on how it works. We even have a section on resources. These are blog posts, so you can look at things like how to turn one idea into a week of marketing content with the help of AI. We have a pricing page. All the things you would typically see in a SaaS-based tool like this. And then finally, we can go to our dashboard. I'll show you how this works. The first thing that users will do when they come into Growth Copilot is they'll update these brand settings. Basically, this is just capturing key information about the business, what's the name of the business, the type of business. We can select different types, the description. If you give it the website URL, it can scrape that site and pull out like the logo and the brand colors and copy and content, use all that, save it as context for content drafts and weekly plans and marketing strategy. You can give it more information about your brand identity, your brand voice. If you have brand guidelines, you can upload those, logos, colors, that type of thing, your social media handles, your default channels. So if you're active on some, you want to exclude others, you can select that here. And your visual theme, like what style do you have? Do you want to lock that style in or just want to capture it here? All really helpful. That basically creates a lot of context, and in the context of retrieval augmented generation, that's a lot of the data and the documents that are used to provide really good context to LLMs when creating content drafts, weekly plans, marketing strategy, all that good stuff. We have different types of tools that are available as well. One of the things I'll highlight here is a marketing strategy tool. The way this works is I've noticed that OpenAI Deep Research is really, really good and powerful. People are often really surprised with the quality of what comes back from deep research. And so the idea here is, can we use OpenAI's deep research to create a marketing strategy that's really comprehensive and detailed and bespoke for that specific business? And so the way it works is you click on New Strategy. You're going to answer some of these questions. It's going to provide the context to OpenAI Deep Research. And then once you do that, you can click on Start, and it's going to basically kick off that deep research process, which can take 10 or 20 minutes. So what it's going to do is complete that, take the output, put that into a PDF, and email it to you. And what I found is that these types of marketing strategies are actually really, really good. Like most of the ideas are actionable, comes up with things that maybe you haven't thought of before. It's just really well researched and well written, and I think really helpful for a lot of businesses. So I'm excited about this particular tool. Once you've done those things, you can come back to the marketing plans section, and I'll show you a plan that I've just recently created. As we jump into this, you'll notice we can see the channel focus. So these are the channels that have been recommended. This is the weekly plan. We can expand this and see the whole thing. So there's a summary. It gives us the plan for each specific channel in terms of what should we be doing, what are some of the tasks. It goes through, it's recommending Instagram, email, blog. It gives you some ideas for lightweight experiments that you can run. And then here's where I think it's also really helpful. It's creating channel-specific content. So it's drafting content that at least gives you a good starting point for some of your marketing. And it's giving you multiple options here. So for blog posts, for example, it's giving us 2 different options. And if we go through here, we can see a summary, the SEO keywords, a table of contents, and even a preview. So it's going to draft a first draft that we can take and start to refine and make this content our own. Another cool thing that we can do here is add media. So if we want to make our blog post a little bit more engaging, we can add a beach scene, and we can select what style we want. Maybe it's minimalist, and we want the AI to generate this for us, so we're going to click generate. This will take a little bit of time to run and come back, but it's going to give us an AI generated image based on the prompt and the specific style that we selected of what we were looking for. If we don't like it, we can always delete it. We can try again. And then I'll show you there are other ways that you can add images. Of course, you can select an option to upload your own image, or go out and to Unsplash and find other images that way. So here's one that came back. If we like it, we love it, we can keep it. Otherwise, we can delete it. We can generate something else. We can go to search stock photos. It'll come back with a number that we can choose from. So multiple ways to add really rich media into each of these marketing channels. And then if we go down, see the same thing for Instagram. I have multiple options to choose from. It's giving me the visual brief to create the image or select the image, a caption. And then for the email, again, I've got a couple of ideas here I can choose from with the subject line, the hero block, email sections, and again with each of these, if I want to add media, I can generate media, I can add images, that type of thing. And finally, for Twitter here, it's got multiple variants. So there's a question hook, there's an insight, there's a CTA, just multiple ideas here of things that we could post on Twitter. And it's going to remind us of some of the experiments we could try this week. So if we're good with all that, once we've like had a chance to review the draft content, refine it, we can move on to the publishing module. This is still in the works. This is TBD, but this is going to allow you to connect and integrate with your platform so you can publish and schedule. You can also get back performance tracking, and that way each week the weekly plan gets better and smarter based on what's actually happening, what's working, that type of thing. And then finally, we can take a look at this community module. This is also a work in process, not quite ready yet, but the idea here is there are a lot of really rich discussions that are happening online that are relevant to a company and its products, but it's really hard for a small business owner, an independent worker to figure out like what are the discussions and where should I jump in and how should I go about it. It's also something where a lot of times it impacts AEO and a brand's visibility in AI results through things like discussion topics that are happening on Reddit. Um, so this is basically going out to search relevant community topics and discussions that are happening. It's giving us some insight into like why should we engage in that discussion right now. It's going to show different engagement angles that we could take, and then it's going to remind us of platform etiquette. So it's really important that we just we don't just jump in and be overly promotional, but we add some value to that discussion. We really engage. It's really part of communicating and building community, not just one-way marketing. And that is it. Um, Go back to the beginning. Next, I'll jump into a little bit of an overview of how I used AI through every step of this process to come up with the idea and the concept, and then refine that and bring it to life. All right, the next thing I want to talk through is just how I went from the idea, the concept, to bringing this to life. And AI was helpful at every step in this process. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the idea really came about through conversations with small business owners about challenges they're having with marketing and ways that AI could be helpful. Um, and so that got me thinking about this idea, this type of solution. And these days, a lot of times, the first place I'll go when I'm exploring something new is to ChatGPT, and I'll go back and forth with kind of exploring an idea, a concept, get some information, some advice, iterate through that process. I'll often, once I've got a better sense of what I'm looking for, I'll use OpenAI's deep research capability, and I'll give it a lot of context around what I'm trying to explore, the research I want to do, what I want to document, what I want the output to be. And then deep research will go out and spend 10 or 20 minutes and usually come back with something that's pretty awesome. And so that's what I did here. I asked OpenAI Deep Research to really help me think through the concept for this particular solution. I wanted some advice on really exploring the market. So who would the customers be? Is this a real problem? Is it a real need? What is the total addressable market for this type of solution? What's the product vision? What's the potential product roadmap? What does that look like? Even wanted advice on how could I grow and scale this type of business? So how could I get started in a bootstrap type of way? And then if it takes off, what are my options for either continuing to bootstrap this business or get investment? What would that look like? Um, it gave me some insight into even things like what are the financial metrics and financial performance? What would that look like? When would this type of solution break even? What does that look like at each stage of growth? All that good information. So basically, it came back with this, which is a 30-page, fairly detailed, comprehensive business plan that's looking at market research and industry trends, really creating a product vision, product roadmap, and then giving me some options to think about ways to grow and scale the business. And so I can jump through, it did things like it researched what are the marketing challenges for small business. So it came back with some really interesting stats around the the top challenges that small business owners would have when it comes to marketing, things like content creation, marketing planning, performance analysis. What are the trends around AI adoption? What's the total addressable market? What's that look like? How's it calculated? What's the product vision and roadmap? What are some of the key features to include in the prototype? And then what should that build out? What should that roadmap look like post launch? What's the go-to-market strategy? So how should we think about distribution and getting this out into the world? How should we think about our beta launch? How should we think about positioning and messaging? What's the freemium angle here? How would that work? How should we think about content marketing? How should we think about community engagement, partnership, social proof? Lots of good ideas here. What's the initial launch plan? So it drafted a really interesting way to go from beta, get feedback, collect metrics. What's the business model and pricing strategy? What are the financial projections and unit economics? How can we scale this? What are the funding options? What are the investment strategies? And then the conclusion. So this is really helpful. I mean, this is again took like some back and forth with OpenAI initially, and then creating the context, getting the deep research, getting this back, refining it a bit, but really quickly in like less than an hour, getting a really solid kind of first draft of what's this business plan look like? Is this worth pursuing? How would we pursue it? Lots of good recommendations here. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the brand system, creative design, AI is super helpful with this process. Everything from thinking through ideas for company name, for product name, logos, different versions of the logos, brand guidelines, web and social design, user experience, all that good stuff. Lots of help from ChatGPT for this. And then next, if we get into a little bit of the system overview and the architecture, for the front end, this is using Next.js and React. For the back end, it's using FastAPI and Python. The AI layer, again, as I mentioned, I've used OpenAI's AgentKit, plus I'm using different LLMs depending on the specific needs for that agent. And I'm also using RAG, retrieval augmented generation, to provide context documents into the solution. And then the data layer, it's vector store. It's also using Supabase as the database on the back end. And then a little bit of the technical design, how AI works in this case. There are multiple agents. So we have a planner agent, which is taking the user goals, the context, and then intelligently routing tasks to specialized agents. There's a content agent, which is generating the structured content, which includes the posts, the plans, the captions, all with the brand consistency and identity for that company. There's a community agent, which is going to analyze discussions and identify authentic engagement opportunities. And then RAG pipeline, that's retrieving all the relevant context from the vector database, things like brand guidelines, ideal customer profiles, all that good stuff. So learning's next steps, I guess, like I mentioned at the beginning, always back up your code, always check in your code early and often. You can automate that so that you're updating and checking in code on a regular basis. All good things to remember. What worked well? I mean, really the end-to-end and code building with AI, ChatGPT and Claude Code really accelerated every stage. I would often use these two in tandem. So I would go to ChatGPT, help me envision the user experience for a new module, how it would work, go back and forth a bit, and then actually get like detailed specifications for how to build that, and then go into Claude Code. Helpful hint, if you're doing a lot with Claude Code, you can turn on plan mode, which makes Claude Code much more robust. And so I could give it, a lot of the detailed specifications and things that I'd brainstorm with ChatGPT, And in plan mode, Claude Code creates a really robust plan and actually creates much more high quality code than if you don't have plan mode turned on. Um, Multi-agent orchestration that proved to be really robust and scalable. I really liked, starting with the logo and the brand identity and the brand guidelines from the very beginning, just to have things that are consistent and look a little bit more professional. And then having like this production first mindset from the very beginning instead of creating a prototype or a throwaway demo. Next, there's a lot of things to do. Jumping in next week, if I do want to push this into production, there's more work to do on the data persistence layer with Supabase. There's a lot to do with content distribution and integrating with different channels. That community module I'm really excited about. That needs to be built out. A quick recap again, this took me about 5 days to rebuild and go from code loss to a production ready system. Got like multiple AI agents, and this was 100% AI assisted really at every step of this process. That's it. Thanks for jumping in, for listening this week. Love to hear your thoughts, and I hope you have a great weekend.